It's on.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Municipal Utility Board on August 26th, 2025. Um, Approval of the agenda. Second. Approval of the minutes from July 22nd. Is it the last meeting, correct? Yeah.
Second?
Okay, so moved. Approval of the claims. Anybody have any
Any outliers there, Rick, on the charges?
No, nothing out of the ordinary.
Paying for that well? How close to,
So I'll give you an update, but we're actually, I mean, this is the week we're doing the training on it, and so, yeah.
approval of the claims?
Boy, that's a big invoice for that well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So just keep in mind, all of our well invoices, we pay up front, and then we submit them into the state and get reimbursed. And then when the whole project is completed, we'll close out our loan, and then that's when we make the payments on it, and that's what we collect the surcharges for, is to make those payments. So, yeah, we have to front the money up front, but like I said, we get reimbursed on it, and then it gets rolled into our loan package. And the surcharges that we've been collecting, then we make quarterly payments on those loans. So it seems like a lot of money, but and it is, but there's funding mechanisms in place to pay for them.
I'll move on bills.
Second. All those in favor, say aye. So moved. Ann is not here for the financial.
Ann is not here.
If she comes, we'll come back to that.
So the only thing I would, mention, just like every meeting is it's shut-off day. We won't know till usually around 10 o'clock what we have for shut-off numbers. But always falls, because of our meeting days, that's the shut-off day as well. So that's what they'll be working on. Likely she'll give us a report on.
No customer concerns. Water superintendent report.
Good morning. Excuse me. So we've been aggressively getting after our radio read program, and I'm glad to say we're down to 5 non-city accounts that are not radio read. The holdup on this one building is I'm waiting for some dual port smart points. Just to simplify things. We could have put the single port on, but it's a waste of money and materials. And ironically, yesterday we randomly get warranty stuff from the meter company, and I got the materials I need. So our Route 30 should be, that's a radio read, is Route 30, Route 100, Route 200, but we should be 100% done, other than there are some city accounts that there's no sense in wasting the money on a smart point. We always have access to them. We have about 8 of those. They're seasonal. They're sprinklers in the cages on Main Street. There's a restroom down by the soccer fields. I mean, some simple things that for the 200 and some bucks for a smart point, we always have access to it. So we're trying to be fiscally responsible with that a little bit.
So when you say accounts, you mean meters to read?
Correct. Yep. So out of 3,250 meters, we're down to 5 that are billable customers and another 8 that are ours. So to me, that's a pretty good percentage. We've really gotten after it. I've been working on the lead copper service line inventory still. I need to resubmit that by the end of September, and then they will send us back and tell us how to proceed with notifications on who doesn't fit their criteria. We still have many residents' accounts that we have not accounted for, so we're still working on that, but we do trickle them in slowly when they need to be turned off for anything. Before we'll turn them back on, I make sure that somebody's there and we inspect and identify what their service line is. So I don't have a number on that yet. They added 2 more columns for me to fill out as well, so that's kind of been eating my time trying to discern that. And last, trying to keep it kind of short, I have been working on numbers for our water diversion out of the aquifers, the Minnelusa and the Madison. There's a lot of data there that I haven't been able to easily acquire yet for what we build. I have a lot of the pump stuff, but I just soon wait to give you those numbers until I have the whole picture for you. But that will be coming. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Public Works Director report.
Morning. So as we briefly discussed a little bit earlier, we have reached our substantial completion on well number 8 was August 22nd, so last Friday. We're scheduled, Todd and his guys are gonna be doing startup training tomorrow all day, which basically goes through the operation of the well, operation of the systems, the SCADA, kind of the complete operation of that well is a little bit different than some of our other wells, and the other reason we do that is to make sure that everything works correctly. So we'll be going through and making all the different alarms go off and making sure that they call out the right people and whether they're set up to send a physical call out or a text message or whatever. We go through the whole operation of the well and make sure that it performs as specified in the specification. So we did, after it'd been, probably better part of this year anyways, that well is now sat stagnant and inactive after it was drilled because we had to put up the pump in the pump house and whatever. And so on startup, when we did start it up, we got a little bit of debris in there. The water was fairly muddy and red, had a lot of soils in it. We did run it for a couple of days straight, probably about 6 hours, maybe a little bit more, and it did finally clear up. That's not to be unexpected when you drill a new well. A lot of times in the initial years of using that well, we have to lengthen every well that we run. When we turn it on, it goes through a sequence of flushing, and that could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes or longer, just flushing the debris. And you think about it, that's the same reason why we flush hydrants, is to get that old water. Well, when we have a new well that we've just recently put in, a lot of those things, the drillings and things like that have resettled. Some of the, at the bottom of it where we don't have a casing in it, some of the debris continues to fall in. And so pumping it out gets all that out and gets it clean. So that it's not unexpected that we would run it that long. That's fairly common. And when we did get it to clear up, it looked pretty good. They did take water samples. I don't believe we've gotten the results on it yet. We are running that well right at 90% of its ability. So when we drill those wells, the pumps and the motors and everything are sized accordingly to the depth in the water. And seems like that sweet spot's right at about 90%. We never really ever want to run them at 100%. It's somewhere usually 90, 93% that we want to run them. Seems like that's where we get the best, because sometimes you can run them so much you create that disturbance down there and that turbidity that creates the poor quality water. And I think they told me we were right at 600 gallons per minute at 90%. So it should, I mean, it's a good well. Hopefully we have good quality. And we should over the next couple of weeks be closing that out. So very good project, something that was greatly needed, and we're excited to get that online and begin to use it. Another project that Todd has been working on and the council was the transfer of the Woodle Field to the school. That's been completed. Actually, on the 18th, we signed all the paperwork and transferred that over to the school. And then over the course of the rally, they did put in a new water line, and then Todd and his guys worked on the connection point with that and making sure that we had the meter hooked up. And the whole idea behind that was a very shallow line that we had to turn on and turn off early in the year so that it wouldn't freeze. And so, for example, when the track meets would happen, we couldn't turn the water on because the ground was still cold. The nighttime temperatures get freezing. We couldn't risk those lines freeze and break. And the same thing in the fall. We would have to, when we would winterize our irrigation system, we would have to irrigate that. So we do have a new service line installed that's to the correct depth that will prevent it from freezing. And basically we can leave that line on all year long if that's what the school chooses to do. That building is heated, so we don't have any issues there. So that was a very good project to get done. We had a little bit of cost partnering with the school in that and getting the meters and the valving set up on our end. But overall, they
now have, what is it that's inside the building?
well, all plumbing in the building, that building is heated. So as long as they turn the heat on, kind of like your house, all of your internal plumbing, if you don't have your heat on, it's going to freeze too. But as long as you keep the heat on, you can keep that building, you can keep that water on longer. I don't believe that the school will keep it on year round. I think at some point in time, probably at the end of the football season, they'll go ahead and winterize it, would be my guess.
Sessions building?
Yes, correct, yep. The field and all of that, they have a well that they water from, and I think you guys are probably all aware that next year they're doing a pretty extensive project and putting in turf on that field. They'll still need water, but they won't use as much water because they won't have to, of course, water the grass and whatnot. So that's a project that they've been planning for quite a few years, and it sounds like they're to a point where it's going to happen next year. I know we did sign all of our construction easements with them for the use of the parking lot because they're going to remove quite a bit of soil out of there in order to put the turf in. I forget the exact number. I want to say it's 2 to 3 feet out that come off of that field. And then they got to put the proper bedding on it because turf still needs to drain, and they got to have a drainage system on it. So we've been working with them on that, and again, excited to see that project happen. There's certainly pluses and minuses on turf fields versus grass, but I think with the continued use of that field, and they want to do more and more things, they want to start playing soccer on it, the grass just doesn't hold up. They can't water it enough and mow it and play on it. It turns brown, and it actually starts to turn to dirt just from the use, if you get that much use on it. So turf is probably the right direction for that application there.
Respectfully, it makes no difference, but I am not in favor of turf on that field. If you look at the films on artificial turf, when there's a player that crashes to the turf ground, there's bits of rubber dust that come up underneath that player, and they can inhale that rubber dust. And I think it's a health risk. And that's my respectful opinion. And obviously, sounds to me like it's gonna go ahead.
Yeah, you know, like I said, that's a decision that the school board's already made. It's now their property. The city doesn't really have a say on that, but agreed, there are pros and cons of both ways, so duly noted.
Are they gonna end up with extra dirt?
So we are, what part of the agreement that we made with them is part of their contract with their contractor was they had to provide a site within 1 mile of that location to remove all the excess dirt. And they reached out to us and said, hey, do you guys have a site? I mean, we'll end up with that dirt, yes. And from everything that it looks like when we dug the water line in, it should be pretty good dirt. And Cody is chomping at the bit to have that, and we've got plenty of places to use it, both at the cemetery, in our parks. We can level off some area, you know, where we get dips and dives. We'll have good dirt where we can level that off and get reseeded. So yeah, it should be a good win-win.
Just gonna put turf on the football field then?
That's my understanding. I haven't seen the full, complete plans. Nope, the soccer fields, they did do a project here, the Soccer Association over the summer, that started in June, and they did, hauled in some dirt, they dug up some places, they brought in sand and leveled off the entire west half of the soccer fields, replanted grass. Looks like it took pretty good, and I was a little concerned on the water consumption because they wanted to water 3 to 4 times a day. They didn't do that. When we looked at it, we really didn't have probably because of the rain that we got, there wasn't a large consumption on that project. And then my understanding is they intend to do the east half of the fields this in 2026, do the same thing. So hopefully that will make some good improvements for them and kind of level that field out. And I know I do constantly hear from people how they enjoy both the football and the soccer. People from out of town really enjoy coming to our facility, given the backdrop and where it's at. A lot of people have mentioned to me it's one of their favorite places to come in the state of South Dakota and play on our facilities because of the location of them. So I think that's good.
It's, their property, is it just the property that's inside the fence?
So when we had that surveyed and platted, we went about 2 feet off of the fence so that if they needed to maintain, they could have it. And then the front property line comes right to the back of the bike path that's there in the front of it. And so from the bike path, and then we have a shared use agreement, of course, on the parking lot. But everything from behind the bike path to the north, a little over 9 acres. The other thing that we got lined up for our next meeting in September is Western Dakota Regional Water System is going to come and provide with an update. We are members of the Western Dakota Regional Water System. One of their primary goals is to bring water from the Missouri River to western South Dakota. They've got a few hurdles to jump before that happens, but they're certainly making progress and headway. They did get a new executive director, Kristen Conzett, so I haven't not met her yet. So that'll be my first time meeting her, but I'm sure we won't get too deep into that. She'll give us an update and provide us with a little bit of an update. You know, recently there's been a lot of in the news on the Black Hills water supply and not meeting demands, and particularly Rapid City. You know, you guys all understand Rapid City gets the majority of their water through flows coming out of Pactola. So when we do have dry years and the water is down in Pactola, you know, they don't release as much water down the creek, and that does affect Rapid City, and then they make up the difference in some of their well water. They don't like to combine well water and surface water because of the different treatments. So that's part of the problem. And then water quality really, as you get to the south and south and east, it diminishes. I mean, I think that we're probably set up in our location to have some of the best water quality, hence why we don't have to do any treatment to it. You know, all we do is add a little bit of chlorine to disinfect, and then fluoride is mandated by the feds. So we don't treat our water. Fort Meade, for example, they use surface water that comes out of the canyon up here. Which, when I talk about surface water, that's groundwater, that rainwater that goes in. I mean, it's kind of runoff. It's not deep well water. And of course, that's what sits up on the hill up there just to the east of the football field is a water treatment plant. So again, they have to bring their water in, completely treat it like we do with our wastewater. I mean, it's really a lot of the same technology. The plants don't know if it's drinking water or wastewater. It's doing the same thing to clean it, and then they put it into their system. So certainly when you rely on those types of water systems, the climate has a much bigger effect on your availability for water, because if you don't get the snowpacks and you don't get the rains, your water availability diminishes. Not to say that you know, part of this study indicates that some of the aquifers aren't recharging as fast as what they think or they normally do. And again, that some of that comes into and it's not even necessarily locally. When we're recharging our aquifers, they're coming from snowpacks in Montana, Wyoming. So when those mountains don't get the snow that they normally, I mean, that's what all filters down through there and recharges our aquifers. But I will tell you too that I've read reports that our aquifers are in the best shape that they've been since they've been keeping record of it. So is it of concern? Absolutely. Is there things that we need to do? Absolutely. Again, that's why we're a part of this program, and this group is we're a voting member. So as they do things, the city of Sturgis has a vote in that. We had a choice to make years ago whether or not we wanted to be a member of this system. I don't ever really see us necessarily being a user of this system, given our water is a little bit different than any other community around us. But we certainly want to have a voice in what happens, and maybe at some point we will become a user of it. So certainly some interesting things to go on, and again, won't go into too much detail. We'll let James Jones and Kristen go into that. Todd and I were at a meeting with them a few months back, and they mentioned you know, the problem with bringing the water from Missouri River to here is cost, and can they do that, treat it, pump it, and get it here and afford to sell it at a reasonable cost? That really, I mean, that's a long ways to transfer water, and we're talking a big pipe. So can they manage doing that and getting it to the end user at something that is reasonable and affordable? And that seems to be the struggle, is figuring that part out. And one other alternative that they mentioned to us in our last meeting was the possibility of constructing a pipeline that basically would maybe run down the I-90 corridor, and for the communities in the northern Black Hills who had an excess supply of water, piping it down to Rapid City to supplement that source. So again, interesting concept. Don't know that we would commit or not at this point, but certainly again want to be a player and a partner in that. You know, could be a huge revenue generator for the city if we were selling our water to other people. I don't know even how that would affect, you know. So all of the water, you have to have water rights. I mean, we're only permitted to take so much water out of the aquifers based on what the state has licensed us to do. So it becomes a factor of, okay, how much are you using? And that's part of why Todd has to has to supply those diversion reports every year back to, and that's exactly when we talk about a diversion report, is how much water are we pulling out of our aquifers. And so we look at all of our different water rights permits for all the different wells and add those up, and then we add up what we're pulling out of from all of our production. And again, we're a small percentage of what we have legal rights to pull, but again, not sure whether it would be the right decision. Certainly something for the MUB board and the council to consider, whether or not if we had excess and how much, if we would entertain selling that to, you know, to this group and to another community, so.
I have a question. You mentioned Fort Meade's water supply. I think at a previous meeting you shared with us that the school is on their system.
So the school is on their system. The school receives water from Fort Meade, even though they're in the city limits. Another example would be like the Kickstart out there that's been annexed in the Thunderdome. They're on Bear Butte Valley water, even though they're in the city limits. We do, Fort Meade, we supply them with wastewater services, sanitary sewer, garbage services, just not water. Since I've been here at the city, there's been a couple of attempts, and some of them fairly close. I thought we had a deal done. So we've certainly had those discussions with different personnel at Fort Meade about the city supplying them water and them not being in the water business. I think at some point that will likely come up again. We have the capacity to serve them water. We have a more reliable water source. We do have a agreement with them that should they run out of water, their surface water, we won't let the hospital run out of water. We have the ability to turn a valve and provide them water now. Again, the state kind of frowns on that interconnection. And so back even in the day when we had the water dams, we had to sever that water connection from our system because we were all deep well, and even to go a step further, they actually made us, we had different wells that were in different formations, and they made us re-drill and redo some of those wells. They don't like to cross-contaminate between the different aquifers. The only ones that they'll really allow are the Minnelusa and the Madison, but any of the other aquifers they want you to keep isolated. But again, in an emergency situation, we have an agreement we would provide Fort Meade with water. So I think that hopefully, likely in the next few years, maybe that subject will come back up. I know I've discussed that with City Administrator Jordan and Mayor Forrester, that we probably need to sit down and have some of those talks again. So we'll see.
I think it's great that the city could be a backup for them as well as for the school. If something happens to change the future of Fort Meade.
Yeah, and there's certainly some future plans out there, again, that I think that's probably why this will come up again. I don't think it's, at this point in time, is a secret any longer that the National Guard are going to be moving to their property out there, building a new facility. They'll certainly have a increased water demand when all of that gets moved. I haven't seen the total concept of the project, but at one point in time they talked about, even again, there's always this big push to centralize things. And so what I'm saying is, if they're building a new facility out there, it would not surprise me maybe that some of these smaller guard units in Spearfish, Belfouche, maybe those close and they centralize all to one big facility, kind of like what they've done at Camp Rapid. And so in doing that, they would have a much higher water consumption. And so I'm not sure if Fort Meade would be able to handle that or not. Some Some years they certainly would, but other years they probably couldn't handle that extra. So again, I think having those conversations and maybe it's certainly got to be on the table and in everybody's mind. Whether or not it happens would be up to the leadership, but I think that we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we weren't considering all of those things and putting together a plan.
I have another question. Historically now, some concern about when the airport has fought fire, that they've had to use a foam that is a
The
contaminant.
PFAS.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are there historically known areas around Sturgis, Fort Meade, where this kind of foam application, where we have areas that could be contaminated?
Not that I'm aware of, and certainly that was a big concern, and that's part of the problem with when you get to communities like Box Elder or down by the base. That's what has contaminated their water source. Why they don't have good water is because of the decades and decades of that foams and the fuels. We don't have any of that at our airport. And I'm not aware of it.
This year, we were required through the EPA UMCR 5 to sample for PFAS twice. And the first one we sampled, the results are back, they're testing for parts per trillion. And we come back negative on the first sample, and 2 weeks ago, we submitted the second sample, which I anticipate to be negative as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a good point. So some of those, and again, understand that the foams that they use now are completely different than what they were using. But, and again, I don't want to age Todd, but in our age, we haven't had a lot of large fires in the Black Hills where they would have used that stuff either. I mean, I think that where you get into some of the more mountain states, I mean, if you go back into the late 80s and early 90s, like when we had all the big fires in Yellowstone and again, some of those places continue to have, enormous fires where they're using that. We've actually been pretty fortunate that we haven't had those large fires in the Black Hills where those things were used. I think it goes back to some of our logging practices and other fire mitigation efforts certainly have come into play on that, where we haven't had those big catastrophic fires. Recharge from, if that stuff leaches into the ground, it's going to contaminate the aquifers. But certainly when they're loading that out of the airports, and some of the actions and operations that Ellsworth did contribute, like I said, to the fact of that's what they really fought in Box Elder. And I haven't heard, they did drill a new well, and what was that, 6,000 feet? And I haven't heard, I've heard rumblings that maybe even that water quality is still not where it should be. So, yeah.
Forgive me, you're making my mind work too hard. Years ago, out by the National Cemetery and up into the hills, there was a big federally funded project to do a lot of clearing because of the concern for fire. And that we could actually, in Sturgis, be at risk for almost a Dresden type phenomena. If they had a huge fire there, the way that flow and oxygen and everything, Sturgis could be at risk. Makes me wonder, has there been a plan or discussion for the Black Hills in general, and local communities, on what the Forest Service would do to have?
I haven't seen anything necessarily specifically addressing water resources. I do know that they've from time to time they've dipped into the water dams with a helicopter in a bucket. And typically that's what they want to do. They would rather use water than the foams. But back to your point, yes, we've been working over the last few years, and actually funny, we have a follow-up meeting next week, actually. The Forest Service did put together a mitigation plan, and particularly here to the south of Sturgis, that got actually identified through some congressional measures as a higher priority a few years ago, and that bumped up the ability to put these projects on. And if you remember, in 2024, we did do what they called the Topaz Fire Mitigation Plan, which was directly south of Sturgis and south, pretty much on the west side of Vanacker, and then straight south of Sturgis. They did go in, and that was some very steep and extreme terrain, and they had to bring in these logging companies from the Pacific Northwest and do methods and means, this tethered logging, which basically means they have a big cable that holds their machinery so it don't go plummeting down. And they were able to get a bunch of that thinned out. They came in and masticated. They shredded up all of the vegetation. And you'll see that, like as you go up to your cabin, I'm sure you can see that on the sides, probably just this side of Graham's, where that's all been cleared out. That was the first part of this program, which was the Topaz, and they're continuing to move forward with that fire mitigation, probably not at a rate which we initially thought, and some of that comes down to the federal cuts. We lost in the last year, we lost our district ranger, our recreation special, a bunch of people, literally all the people that we used to work with retired. And so they have not replaced those people yet. So some of these projects have somewhat almost a little bit stalled out because of that, but certainly there is a bigger plan, and they work very well. The Forest Service is a good partner with us in doing that. Nyman's is a good partner with us, but absolutely has been a big push on some fire mitigation, but nothing that I've been a part of on water specific. I think their take on it is to try and mitigate the risk of a fire to begin with. Water, they'll get it from wherever they have to.
Thank you for that update.
Yeah. That's all I have on my report, so.
Any old business? New business.
So new business, as we move forward, working with the city administrator and the mayor on the 2026 budgets, one of the things that this board is charged with is making a recommendation of setting the rates. Council will end up taking this recommendation, and generally at the first of the year in January, one of the first meetings in January, they do set the rates based on a resolution. But the timing of this now is because in preparing the budget, we really need to know what the revenues are going to be, so that we can properly identify them in the budget and make sure that our expenditures, are below what our revenues are. Part of the reason that we do adjust those rates annually, it's necessary so that we can keep our systems reliable, safe, and financially healthy. And by making these small, predictable increases, then we prevent costly breakdowns and avoid large raises that we've had to do in the past. I think it wasn't very many years ago, I forget the exact time frame, but we hadn't raised utility rates in like 10, 15 years. And again, then when we find the need to do that, we have to do a much larger increase than if every year annually we would do a small increase. 3 years ago, I believe it was 3 years ago, the council actually took action to reduce the utility rates across the board. We lowered them. Again, I've never heard of a municipality doing that, so certainly is necessary. This does help us plan for, with the water is of course an enterprise fund, so any revenues that we bring in, we keep within the enterprise funds to do maintenance, repairs, equipment replacement. So it really is a job of establishing those rates, is really to protect our financial stability. It's not about raising extra money. It's about keeping our essential services strong and sustainable, for the future. So very important. One of the things that we wanted to consider generally in the past, what we've done is just looked at, and if you remember for 2025, we did a 3% increase to the base rate for residential and a 5% for commercial accounts. One of the things that Todd and I have been looking at is in addition to maybe, or substitution, or however you want to look at it, is not just necessarily doing an across-the-board increase on the base rate, but it's really taking a look at our base rate and developing a strategy that will keep us financially strong, but not incur a large burden to our customers. And so if you look at the different communities in the Western Black Hills, I don't know that there's any two that bill utilities the same, and they're different amounts and different base amounts. And so right now we basically, we have a fixed base rate for residential and commercial on both water, sewer, and garbage. And it's based off of the size of the service line. So if you have a 1-inch service line, it's less than if you have a 4-inch service line. And then in addition to that, we charge $2.52 for residential per 1,000 gallons of water usage. So you pay your base rate, and then if you use, for example, 1,000 gallons or 2,000 gallons, because it would be above 1,000 above and beyond. So if you use 2,000 gallons, you would pay $2.52 for that 1,000 gallons of water you used, and then for every 1,000 over that, you continue to pay that rate. What we've been looking at, and what we would like to make a suggestion to, is that I think it would be beneficial that as a part of our base rates, we would include up to 2,000 gallons of water as part of the base rate. So there's no additional charge for that per 1,000 up to the 2,000. It's included in your base rate. Then once you hit 2,000 gallons, anything in excess of that, you would continue to pay a dollar figure for that. And again, at the $2.52 per 1,000, we've kind of calculated it out through looking at what our utility costs are, our pumping costs, that it generally costs us somewhere in $6 to produce 1,000 gallons of water. So at $2.52 per 1,000, we're far from covering that cost. So we would like to see that in addition to, or as a part of, that not only do we look at the base rate, but we look at raising that per 1,000 gallon rate. And I could not ever find in the history, I mean, certainly since I've been here, I don't know that the council and the MUB have ever raised that per 1,000 rate. And again, if you look at other communities, some of them have a staggered that between 2,000 and 5,000, it's this. If you go over 5,000, then it goes to this. We've looked at and evaluated our accounts, and at least a third of our accounts, and for example, in the month of August, which is usually a high usage month because people are watering, whatnot, in the month of August, this year, a third of our accounts use 2,000 gallons or less. So this would actually, when we think about it, trying to not cause a burden, are people who are on fixed incomes or elderly who probably aren't consuming much water. This would give them a fixed and in some cases a cheaper water bill. And also we feel that you know, the people that are gonna have the largest increase in raising the per thousand are gonna be your high water usage people, which again, at some level, starts to promote water conservation, right? Because me, for example, I choose to have a green yard and I choose to run my sprinklers, you know, whenever I want to run them. That's a choice I make, so I may go through 40,000 gallons of water in addition to the base per month. But that's my choice, and I can pay for it. If I don't like it, I don't have to water my lawn as much, right? But that would increase my bill, monthly bill. And again, if we went to, you know, what we would suggest is maybe somewhere in the $3 range, not jumping it all the way up to $6, but maybe a 50-cent, 48-cent increase. On average, that would increase my bill $6 or $7 a month, which again, to me, is a choice that I make, and if I choose to do it, that's manageable. But
How much would it increase?
about $6 a month.
At 40,000 gallons, that's a lot of 1,000-gallon charges.
Yeah.
That's-
But you think, I mean, it's only 50 cents per thousand.
Yeah.
So,
It was $2.50 for 1,000.
but I'm talking about the increase. That's what it is already now. I'm talking about an additional,
If we go up with 48 cents.
Okay.
not your total bill would be $5. I'm talking about the increase. So from my normal bill, what I just paid would, if we went to a formula like this, it would increase about $6 a month in those heavy use months. You know, when we ran some of our accounts, and I'm gonna shock you a little bit, the highest residential user for the month of August used 129,000 gallons for a residence. If we look at his bill, that would increase it by $61. If we look at some of our larger commercial units, we have one account that in the month of August used 3,429,000 gallons for a month. That would be a significant increase. You know, that would increase that bill by $1,645. And I believe that was one of our trailer parks. So again, they're spreading that out from however many hundreds of users that they have, and they bill separately.
Did you hear you right? $60 increase for that highest resident?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, a third of our residents use 2,000 or less anyway, so a third of your water users are not even being, so again, the effect that you're doing is on your higher water users. So again, you're trying to promote water conservation, and the revenue that it generates, we figure, doing some rough math, that would generate an additional $150,000 a year. So something to think about. I know in visiting with the mayor a little bit yesterday, he wants to tackle this all at one time. Both adjusting, if needed, the surcharges. And so one of the things when we look at the surcharges, which are all those projects, and for example, the well number 8 project that we got the state revolving loan fund for, we had to implement a $4.55 surcharge for that. And that's mandated by the state when we take that loan off. And that's the surcharges that are on your water bill that are all listed individually. We have to maintain 110% of what our loan payment is for those projects. So, and the surcharges are billed based on the number of units you have, and so not everybody pays $4.55. If you have a typical residential unit that is considered one unit, would pay that. An apartment building that may be considered 4 or 5 units would pay 4 or 5 times that. So one of the things that we need to do yearly is we need to evaluate those surcharges and ensure collecting enough to cover the 110%. Well, we can't do that until we have the revenues that have been collected, and we just simply at this time we don't have those numbers from the finance office, so we can't determine whether or not we could lower those, and not always are you going to lower them. If you remember, in 2023, one of those surcharges we actually had to raise it by a few cents to make sure we covered that 110% amount. Generally speaking, you should always be able to, if you're correctly collecting it up front, you should always be able to lower those, because as you get growth, you add into that and you spread that amount out. If we build another 100 homes that we didn't have last year and they become water account users now, we should be able to lower those surcharges by that amount, because again, we're equally spreading that out. So it only comes to reason that we're able to lower those, but there are some instances, like I said, where you may have to raise those, but it's all based on the revenues that you're collecting and matching that up against what your payments are, making sure that we have 110%. And the mayor is committed to looking at that and making sure that if we have the ability to lower any of our surcharges, that we do that at the same time or in succession with doing any rate increases that we have.
So you'll give us some suggestions on that possibly at the next meeting?
Yes, and probably what I would suggest is in between now and the next meeting, I think that I will be pushing out some supplemental information to you guys, and we may need to have a quick meeting sometime in between, before our scheduled meeting at the end of, it'd be the 23rd, and that's gonna be a tough meeting anyways with Western Dakota coming. They'll probably take up the whole meeting. So it may be beneficial for us here in a couple of weeks to meet again real quick, just to tackle the rates. And the other part of that is the schedule that the city administrators put forward. We're anticipating the first reading of the budget on the 6th of October. Not saying that there can't be changes made, but in preparing a budget, we really need to know what our revenues are. And this does have a huge impact on what our projected revenues are.
You mentioned the 6th of October, what happens then?
That's the first reading of the city budget.
So we maybe need to look at a meeting on like the 9th?
Well, we could pick, I think if we had a special meeting, we could pick any date or time. It doesn't have to be 7 a.m. and it doesn't have to be on a Tuesday. And again, it could be a very quick meeting where that's the only topic that we're taking care of is the rates, the recommendation of the rates. But I would feel more comfortable getting you guys some more information that we just truly don't have right now in order to look at the holistic picture. And the other thing, I think that, we're moving through recodification project right now. Everything that I'm hearing and everything is looking like we're going to be moving away from the MUB regulations and codifying them into an actual ordinance. And along with that ordinance, the MUB is probably going to be charged with handling all the utilities. So not just water, but it truly would be sanitation, wastewater, and water. Which again, makes sense, and this board has been doing that in the past several years. I mean, when you guys do your rate recommendations, it's across the board, all, because everything is based on the water rate. You know, we don't have a meter on sewer, so it's based on your water consumption. Garbage is kind of an oddball where it's just a flat fee, but really you guys have been doing that anyways when it comes to rates, but I think that's the direction I'm seeing everything going to, is actually codifying that in our city ordinances and creating a utility ordinance that would outline all of these things. We do run into some issues where it's not very clear, where people are looking for the rules and regulations and they're not in the ordinance, and we have to refer them to these regulations. So it does make sense to have them all codified and in an ordinance. So I think that I know that's something that as we move forward through this process and into 26, that's one of the things that we hope to have accomplished. Questions? Man, I'm throwing a lot at you.
When was the last time we had a rate increase?
Well, you did one for 25, you did one in 20, so almost a year from now. I think it was a little bit later of all the turmoil in our, some of our administration leaving and the mayors. It was later in the year, but you guys did make a recommendation in 2024 to set the 2025 rates.
I wasn't on in 2020.
You weren't. Ron was here in your place. You're actually, Tom, I don't believe you were here, or Bernie for that. Sean, you certainly were.
Yeah, but Bernie was here for the one.
Oh, yeah. It would have been, it would,
We just did.
yeah. Yep, in 2024.
2025?
Yes.
Well, we would have been setting the 25 rates.
I was concerned, going up 3%. It was 3 and 5.
We did 3 and 5, yep.
Yeah.
So, if I understand you right, you said it costs us $6 per 1,000 gallons, but we're charging $2.50 for that 1,000.
For residential, and it's $2.83 for commercial per 1,000 gallons.
And Todd and Rick, going forward, the cost of equipment may go up.
It most certainly always, I mean, it's never gonna go down, and it very rarely is gonna, I mean, the cost of doing business is always, I mean, just think about every year your employees' rates, your cost of livings go up, fuel prices, materials, I mean, it's always gonna go up, Tom. I mean, how much, you know, it could be small fractions, but certainly is likely gonna always go up.
So basically, our role is to listen to your recommendations, and we give a recommendation to the council.
Well, we want to provide you with the facts and some options, and then your role would be to take that all in and give a recommendation to the council. The council can certainly choose to either take your recommendation or do something. Generally speaking, they take the recommendation of the board, unless, and again, we want to give you enough information and a holistic picture that you can make a good informed recommendation. And the only time I would see the council not going along with your recommendation if there were some outlying circumstances that you weren't aware of in the budget that needed to happen. But again, my hopes are that we could give you that information. And again, I feel like almost we need to have talks on it, and this all come up at this point in time. It's unfair for you to hear it and 5 minutes later make a recommendation. So I would like you to take some time to think about what we're asking, the information we're providing, and I'd like to provide you with some more additional information. Every community is going through this right now, so in the upcoming weeks, I'll be able to pull a lot of what other communities are doing. I'll go back and look at the information I provided to you last year, because a lot of those communities had projected rate increases over the next 5 years. And if you remember, Rapid City, we're gonna increase by 5% this year, and 7 next, and 11 the following, and Spearfish did some of the similar. I think it's important to understand that, but you also have to understand that not every, it's not even not every, there is not another community that none of us bill the same way. So it's not an apples to apples. Well, gee, Spearfish is doing this, or Belfouche, or Rapid, or Sturgis. We all bill individually and independently different. So I think it's good to have that information and to digest it. But certainly when we consider the rates for Sturgis, we have to look at everything that applies to our conditions, more than looking maybe at the outside. But we gotta keep up, and I hope to put some more of that information together for you that shows, these other communities. For example, a quick comparison, our water base rate for a 1 unit, a residential, our base rate is $8. The base rate for Spearfish is $17. So again, a big difference. And then they charge $2.40 for each 1,000 up to 2,000, and then to $4.21, and then $4.69, and then all the way up to $5 per 1,000 gallon. Again, it's stepped up for how many 1,000 gallons you use. We're not suggesting that. Again, I think we want to look at including a base number of gallons in our base rate, so that if you pay the base rate, you get a realistic amount of water. For, again, the goal is not to make it harder, and we have a lot of residents who are on fixed incomes, who are elderly. The goal is to not make this a hindrance on them. But again, the high water users, me, who chooses to use that much water, I should have to pay for it maybe a little bit more. And I did, Todd was gracious enough to run if we did this increase, and so for your July bill, Tom, yours would have increased by $6.72. Sean, yours would have increased by $7.20, and Bernie, yours by $9.12. And again, that's based on your water usage.
You big user.
So are able to control that. And
1/3 of the residents use less than 2,000.
yes,
Yes.
And so
That's what we're trying to protect.
your inclusion of 2,000 gallons, part of your base rate, that sounds very, for those that aren't watering much, that sounds very reasonable to me.
I like that plan.
so if you guys are open to that, that's,
I
that,
would comment, we have a special event that just happened, and there's gotta be a huge increase in water use around that event.
yeah, it's certainly one of our, and actually the month leading up to it is our biggest month, and I think because we get these vacant properties, I mean, man, we gotta pour the water to them to turn everything green for the rally. So, our bigger consumption is right before the rally. Again, that you're getting into the hot months, but, you're doing a lot of turn-ons. You would think it would be during the event itself, but it's not. It's actually leading up to the event is when we have a higher usage.
How, your information regarding that is important for the, I think, the citizens to possibly have that information so they understand.
Yeah, I would like to, like I said, take an opportunity to put together some additional information, a package for you guys to be able to look at and I mean, actually have it in front of you and look at it and digest it. And then again, my I would ask that at some point in the next few weeks that we call, I don't know what that date is, and I don't know that we need to set it right now. When you guys feel comfortable that you're ready to make a decision, we would just have like I said, a quick special meeting. Maybe it takes 20 minutes or whatever. That would be the only topic on the agenda. Cause again, I think that our September meeting is primarily gonna be, I mean, they're gonna come and talk to you guys, and I'm sure they're gonna talk for an hour.
The timing, so that the public knows that we would have such a meeting, we need to be aware of that too.
We gotta notice it 24 hours in advance. So that we can take care of that. Again, it doesn't have to be if it's, hey, let's meet during lunch, let's meet after work, if 7 o'clock, that's fine. Again, it doesn't have to be a Tuesday, we can choose when it best works for everybody's schedule. We just need to, at some point in time, prior to, probably that meeting at, be the 20, no, it would be we're gonna have a meeting on the 18th and the 22nd for council to handle budgets, so before we have that first reading, we need to be able to put that projected revenue in, and that's gonna be based on the rate structure.
I think the three of us met, and we're all gonna be gone the first 3 weeks of September, aren't we?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think so for October.
We can make arrangements for you to call in.
Okay, thank you for that.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Other matters that may come before the board. And no executive session at this time. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I can't make it.
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
And so I'll be in touch with you guys on getting you some more information, then we'll set a meeting, and then we'll still have our normal meeting, which Western Dakota is coming to.